It said exactly what my best friend said, who is an eye doctor. Yeah, I just want to say thank you for everyone that gave me some really constructive ideas on what could be going on with my eye, because many of you were spot on. And one thing that my best friend said is that it is going to get worse.
What happens when reality TV chaos crosses the line? When drama turns deadly serious and the cameras capture more than anyone bargained for? That's exactly what unfolded when Jasmine unleashed a violent, bloody attack on Yandy Smith, sending shockwaves through the love and hip-hop Atlanta world and leaving fans absolutely speechless. Witnesses say the fight was unlike anything the franchise had ever seen. Screams, chaos, and Yandi left battered as Jasmine was dragged away in handcuffs. But here's the kicker. This isn't just another reality TV meltdown. This one spiraled into a full-blown criminal investigation. Courtroom drama, betrayal, ruined careers, and a fight for redemption that would change both women's lives forever. Buckle up, because this isn't gossip. This is the raw, unfiltered story of rage, revenge, and consequences no one saw coming. It was supposed to be just another explosive filming day for Love and Hip Hop Atlanta. Arguments, confessions, and messy drama. The kind of chaos that keeps viewers glued to their screens. But on that night, the line between entertainment and reality vanished. The cameras captured something that wasn't scripted, wasn't staged, and wasn't part of the show. It was real, and it would change everything. Jasmine had been walking a tightrope for months. Tension with Yandy Smith had been brewing like a storm waiting to explode. Social media shots, cryptic interviews, and shady confessionals had created an atmosphere thick with hostility. And while fans were used to feuds on the show, insiders could feel it. This one was different. This was personal. It all came to a head at a private cast event. A glitzy nightclub party meant to celebrate the launch of a new business venture. Producers had made sure both women were invited, knowing the friction would create ratings gold. What they didn't realize was that they were about to film one of the most shocking moments in reality TV history. As Yandy arrived, she was calm but guarded. She had been warned Jasmine might try to confront her. Jasmine, on the other hand, was a powder keg. Witnesses say she showed up already furious, pacing the room, muttering under her breath, and glaring at Yandy from across the VIP section. Every minute that passed added fuel to the fire. Drama unleashed. #reality TV gone wrong. The confrontation began with words, harsh, cutting, deeply personal words. Jasmine accused Yandy of ruining her life by spreading private details on camera. Yandy fired back, calling Jasmine obsessed and jealous. The insults flew fast, and the energy in the room shifted from tense to toxic. Security moved closer, sensing where this was headed. Then it happened. Jasmine suddenly lunged forward, shoving past security and swinging at Yandi with full force. The room erupted in chaos. Drinks spilled, chairs flew, and guests screamed as the two women tumbled to the floor. According to multiple eyewitnesses, Jasmine grabbed Yandi by the hair, yanking her head back and striking her repeatedly before security could tear them apart. The scene was ugly. Yandy's makeup smeared with blood, her earrings ripped out, her voice hoarse from screaming. The fight lasted less than 30 seconds, but the damage was irreversible. Cameras captured every brutal second, and within hours, clips of the altercation were leaked online. The footage was graphic, raw, and unlike anything viewers had seen before. #LHHATL scandal, #fight caught on camera. The aftermath was immediate. Police were called to the scene, and Jasmine was detained on the spot. Witnesses say she continued shouting insults as she was handcuffed and escorted to a squad car. "You started this," she screamed as flashing lights illuminated the chaotic parking lot. Yandi, shaken and bruised, was taken to the hospital for evaluation. While her injuries weren't life-threatening, doctors documented cuts, bruises, and a mild concussion. More than the physical pain, though, it was the betrayal that stung. "This isn't reality TV anymore," she reportedly told producers. "This is assault." Within hours, news of the attack broke online. Headlines blared across gossip sites. Jasmine arrested after brutal attack on Yandy Smith. Fans flooded social media with outrage, disbelief, and theories. Some were furious, demanding Jasmine be banned from the show permanently. Others speculated that the entire fight had been staged, a theory quickly dismissed when police confirmed she was booked on assault and battery charges. #breaking news. #free Jasmine behind the scenes. Chaos erupted at the network. Executives scrambled to manage the fallout. Sponsors called, demanding answers. Legal teams were brought in to review the footage, and producers who had been banking on drama to boost ratings now faced questions about whether they had ignored warning signs that this feud was spiraling out of control. Meanwhile, Yandy's team wasted no time pursuing legal action. She filed a police report, pressed charges, and made it clear that she wanted Jasmine held accountable. "There's a line you don't cross," she said in a statement. "We can argue, we can throw shade, but you don't put your hands on somebody. Ever." The arrest sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. Reality TV stars are no strangers to drama, but physical violence rarely leads to real-world consequences. This time was different. Jasmine wasn't just a cast member, she was now a defendant. And the stakes were higher than anyone expected. As the night wore on, one thing became clear. This wasn't going away quietly. The footage was too brutal, the injuries too visible, and the public outrage too intense. A storyline that started as entertainment had now crossed into the realm of criminal law. It was only the beginning, because as Jasmine sat in a cold holding cell awaiting arraignment, and Yandi nursed her injuries in a hospital room, the internet was already demanding more. They wanted justice. They wanted answers. And most of all, they wanted to know why this feud had spiraled so far out of control, and what secrets might have fueled the rage behind that. Brutal attack. #justice for Yandi. Assault charges. The world had seen fights before. They'd seen drinks thrown, wigs snatched, and tables flipped. But this was different. This was real. And the fallout was just beginning. And as both women prepared for the battles ahead, in court, online and within themselves, one chilling question hung in the air. Had reality TV finally gone too far? Or was this just the beginning of a scandal that would change love and hip-hop forever? The day after the attack, Love and Hip Hop Atlanta wasn't just trending. It had taken over the entire internet. The fight had gone viral across every social platform, with millions of people replaying the shocking footage frame by frame. Hashtags like #Justice for Yandi, #Free Jasmine, and #Reality TV Gone Too Far were all over Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Everyone had an opinion, and nobody could look away. But behind the trending hashtags and wild fan theories, the real story was unfolding in a very different place. A Fulton County courtroom. Jasmine, still wearing the same outfit from the night before, was led into her arraignment hearing in handcuffs. The once confident reality star looked nothing like the fiery TV persona fans were used to. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes were swollen from crying. And the expression on her face was one of anger, fear, and regret. The charges were serious: assault, battery, and disorderly conduct. And if prosecutors decided to push for an aggravated assault, enhancement, which they hinted they might, Jasmine could face up to 2 years behind bars. #Justice for Yandi, #Reality TV Scandal Yandi. Meanwhile, had taken to social media to thank fans for their support. "I'm still healing physically and emotionally," she wrote in an Instagram post that quickly racked up over 1 million likes. "What happened to me was unacceptable. No one deserves to be attacked. Not on TV, not in real life. I'm speaking up because I refuse to let this become normal." Her message struck a chord. Celebrities, fellow cast members, and even politicians chimed in to condemn the violence. Several women's advocacy groups reached out to offer support. It wasn't just a fight anymore. It was becoming a conversation about accountability, safety, and the dark side of reality television. Meanwhile, Jasmine's team tried to shift the narrative. Her attorney released a statement claiming that Jasmine had acted in self-defense, accusing Yandi of antagonizing and provoking her before the cameras started rolling. They also claimed that the production team had intentionally created a hostile environment to boost ratings, knowing tensions were at an all-time high. This was not a spontaneous outburst, her lawyer argued. This was a situation engineered for entertainment, and my client was pushed beyond her breaking point. #Free Jasmine, #court battle. The courtroom drama intensified as prosecutors began presenting their evidence. Surveillance footage from the venue clearly showed Jasmine initiating the physical contact. Multiple witnesses testified that Yandi had tried to walk away before being attacked. And perhaps most damaging of all, leaked text messages revealed that Jasmine had told a friend earlier that day, "If I see her tonight, I'm going to make her regret ever saying my name." That single message shifted public opinion. What had started as a conversation about provocation now looked like premeditation. Suddenly, the self-defense narrative began to crumble, and Jasmine's legal team scrambled to adjust their strategy. At the same time, the show itself was caught in the crossfire. Critics accused the producers of exploiting real-life tension for profit, and multiple sponsors threatened to pull their funding unless the network addressed the situation. In a hastily released statement, the network announced that Jasmine was suspended indefinitely pending the outcome of the legal case. They also pledged to implement new safety protocols for cast members moving forward, though many fans dismissed the gesture as too little. It's too late. #network under fire, #reality TV reform. The chaos wasn't just legal or corporate, it was deeply personal. Jasmine's personal life began to unravel as the case dragged on. Friends distanced themselves. Brand deals evaporated. She was even dropped by her talent agency. And as paparazzi camped outside her house and bloggers dissected her every move, the stress began to take a visible toll. She's not eating, not sleeping, barely leaving the house. One insider told the Shade Room, "This isn't the Jasmine people know. This is someone who's scared." But Yandi wasn't unscathed either. Despite being the victim, she faced harassment online from trolls who accused her of ruining Jasmine's life and using the situation for clout. Others claimed she was exaggerating the severity of the attack to make herself look good. It was a cruel reminder that, in the court of public opinion, even victims aren't always treated with compassion. Still, Yandi refused to back down. "I'm not going to be silent just because it makes people uncomfortable," she said during a live interview. "If my speaking out helps even one person walk away from a violent situation, it's worth it." #speak up. No more violence. The tension reached a boiling point when the prosecution announced their next move. They were seeking additional charges based on new evidence, including possible intent to cause bodily harm. If successful, Jasmine's potential sentence could double. The news sent shockwaves through the fan base. Supporters begged the court for leniency, while critics called for the maximum penalty. As the trial date approached, one thing was painfully clear. This wasn't just a legal case anymore. It was a cultural moment, a reckoning. A mirror held up to the entire reality TV industry, exposing how far it would go for ratings and how easily real lives could be destroyed in the process. #Trial of the Year. #reality TV exposed. And the deeper investigators dug, the more questions they uncovered. Had producers knowingly placed Jasmine and Yandi in a volatile situation? Had the network ignored warning signs? And perhaps most importantly, was this fight the result of two women's personal hatred, or a system designed to push them toward the edge? The answers would come out in court. And when they did, they wouldn't just decide Jasmine's fate, they would change the future of Love and Hip Hop Atlanta forever. By the time Jasmine's trial began, the atmosphere around Love and Hip Hop Atlanta had completely shifted. Was once seen as a glamorous and messy reality show had now become a cautionary tale. A symbol of how quickly fame could implode and how one impulsive act could change everything. The courtroom wasn't just a legal arena, it was a stage. And everyone, fans, networks, bloggers, even fellow cast members, was watching closely, waiting to see how the drama would end. The prosecution wasted no time laying out their case. They started with the footage, raw, unedited, and damning. The jury watched as Jasmine shoved past security, charged across the room, and yanked Yandy to the ground. They watched Yandy's desperate attempts to shield herself. They saw Jasmine's fists swinging and Yandy's blood staining the floor. The silence in the courtroom was heavy, broken only by the gasps of those who had never seen the footage in full. Courtroom drama. #Justice for Indict. The prosecution didn't stop there. They presented text messages showing Jasmine's hostility in the days leading up to the attack. They shared witness statements from cast members who testified that Jasmine had threatened to humiliate Yandi on camera. They even played an audio clip of Jasmine telling a friend, "If she crosses me one more time, I'm going to make sure she feels it." Every piece of evidence painted a picture of intent, and with every detail. Jasmine's defense became harder to believe. Her legal team fought back, arguing that the show's producers bore partial responsibility. They claimed production. Staff had refused Jasmine's request to film separately from Yandi, and had even encouraged their confrontation for maximum entertainment value. They argued that Yandi's remarks before the attack, which weren't captured on camera, were designed to provoke a reaction. This wasn't just Jasmine losing control, her lawyer told the jury. This was a human reaction to a situation that was engineered to break her. #Free Jasmine, #producer manipulation. The argument struck a chord with some observers. Reality TV had long been criticized for pushing cast members to their emotional limits. And this case was shining an uncomfortable spotlight on that dark side. Even the judge questioned the network's role, asking if production policies might need to be reviewed. But no matter how much blame was placed on the system, one fact remained. Jasmine had physically attacked another person, and the law was clear. As the trial continued, the testimonies became even more explosive. Castmates took the stand, some siding with Yandi, describing her as terrified and traumatized. Others defended Jasmine, calling her a product of the environment the show created. Even producers were subpoenaed, forced to admit that they were aware of the feud but chose not to intervene. One executive even confessed, "We knew they hated each other. We thought it would be good TV." That admission sent shockwaves through the courtroom. It wasn't just a scandal anymore. It was an indictment of an entire industry. #reality TV reform, #BHHATL on trial outside the courthouse. Fans camped out with signs. Some read, "Justice for Yandi." Others said, "Free Jasmine." Streets of Atlanta felt like a protest zone. Meanwhile, every major entertainment outlet was covering the trial 24/7, turning it into one of the most followed celebrity cases of the decade. But the most dramatic moment came when Yandi herself took the stand. Her voice trembled as she described the fear she felt that night. "I thought she was going to kill me," she said, tears streaming down her face. "It wasn't just a fight, it was rage. And I didn't know if I was going to walk out of that room." Her testimony was emotional, powerful, and devastating. It moved several jurors to tears, and it might have sealed the case. Jasmine, watching from the defense table, broke down crying for the first time. Sources later said that she mouthed, "I'm sorry," as Yandi stepped down from the witness stand. #powerful testimony, #tears in court. The closing arguments were intense. The prosecution argued that Jasmine had crossed a line from words to violence and needed to face the consequences. The defense pleaded for mercy, saying that she had been manipulated by the industry and provoked by Yandy's taunts. The judge instructed the jury to focus on the facts, not the drama, not the headlines, not the ratings. And after 3 tense days of deliberation, the verdict was in. Guilty on charges of assault and battery. Not guilty on the aggravated assault enhancement. The courtroom erupted. Cheers, sobs, shouts. Jasmine lowered her head, tears streaming down her face as the judge handed down her sentence. 18 months of probation, 300 hours of community service, mandatory anger management, and a $50,000 fine. It was far less than the maximum penalty, but it was still a devastating blow to her career. Verdict reached. #justice served for Yandi. It was a bittersweet victory. "I didn't want this," she said outside the courthouse. "I didn't want to see another Black woman in handcuffs. But I also couldn't let violence go unpunished. I hope she learns from this. I hope we both do." The trial was over, but the story was far from finished. Because as Jasmine prepared to serve her sentence and rebuild her life, the industry around her was starting to crumble. Sponsors, networks, and cast members were all forced to face the uncomfortable truth. This wasn't just a Jasmine problem. It was a reality TV problem. And if they didn't change, there would be more Jasmines, more Yandys, more nights like this. The verdict may have ended the legal chapter, but it opened the door to a much bigger conversation, one that would reshape love and hip-hop and reality. TV forever. The courtroom verdict might have ended the legal battle, but it was far from the end of the story. If anything, it was just the beginning of a new, even more complicated chapter, one filled with public backlash, personal reckoning, and an industry scrambling to clean up the mess it had helped create. Jasmine may not have gone to jail, but the real sentence she was about to face was far worse: the destruction of everything she had built. The first blow came within 48 hours of the verdict. The network officially terminated Jasmine's contract, releasing a short, carefully worded statement: "We do not condone violence in any form. We wish Jasmine the best in her personal growth, but she will no longer appear on Love and Hip Hop Atlanta." Just like that. Her career, the one she had spent years building, was gone. Brand deals followed suit. Endorsements were canceled. Public appearances were quietly scrapped. Even podcasts and YouTube channels that once begged her to appear stopped returning calls. Sponsors didn't want their products associated with violence. Magazines refused to feature her. And former friends and collaborators distanced themselves, fearing the PR fallout of being seen with her. Career over #canceled culture. Financially, the fallout was brutal. Without steady income, Jasmine struggled to keep up with legal fees, fines, and living expenses. She sold her designer handbags, downsized her apartment, and even auctioned off memorabilia from the show just to stay afloat. "I lost everything," she admitted in an emotional Instagram Live months later. "I thought I was unstoppable. Now I'm just trying to survive." The emotional toll was just as devastating. Jasmine disappeared from social media for weeks, only to return to an avalanche of hate comments. Death threats flooded her DMs. Fans called her a monster, a psycho, and a disgrace. The same audience that once cheered for her drama now vilified her as the villain of reality TV. Meanwhile, Yandy's life moved in the opposite direction. Though the attack had left her traumatized, she emerged stronger and more influential than ever. Her decision to press charges and publicly speak out against violence earned her widespread praise. Brand deals poured in. She became a spokesperson for women's safety campaigns, appeared on national talk shows, and even landed a book deal about resilience and empowerment. From victim to voice. Yanda Strongbutt. Even Yandy's victory was complicated. Behind the scenes, she struggled with anxiety and nightmares. She hired private security for public events. And though she had forgiven Jasmine privately, she admitted in interviews that the incident had left scars that would never fully heal. "It's not about hate," she said. "It's about never wanting to feel that helpless again." As for the Love and Hip Hop franchise, the fallout was nothing short of seismic. Ratings initially spiked thanks to the trial coverage, but public backlash soon followed. Viewers accused the show of exploiting real violence for entertainment. Sponsors threatened to pull funding unless stricter safety measures were implemented. And several cast members, citing toxic work conditions, announced they were quitting the show altogether. The network had no choice but to act. New policies were introduced, including mandatory anger management training for cast members, on-set mental health counselors, and a zero-tolerance policy for physical violence. Contracts were rewritten to include harsher consequences for anyone involved in a physical altercation. And behind closed doors, producers admitted they had ignored red flags leading up to the fight, something they vowed would never happen again. Industry reform, #reality TV change. But for Jasmine, none of those changes could undo what had been done. The industry had moved on, but the stain on her name remained. Every time she tried to launch a new project, the headlines resurfaced. Every interview circled back to the fight. Every opportunity came with conditions or didn't come at all, and yet, despite everything, Jasmine refused to disappear quietly. Slowly, she began rebuilding, starting with a podcast where she discussed mental health, accountability, and the dark side of fame. At first, people mocked it, calling it a desperate attempt to stay relevant. But over time, the audience grew. People who had once hated her started to listen. And some even admitted they had learned from her story. #redemption arc. #second chances Yandi Y2 continued to evolve. No longer defined solely by the attack, she used her platform to advocate for systemic change within the entertainment industry. She partnered with nonprofits, launched a mentorship program for young women, and even spoke before Congress about workplace safety in reality TV production. The incident that nearly destroyed her had become the catalyst for something much bigger. The two women never reconciled. They never became friends. But their stories, forever intertwined, served as a powerful reminder of how quickly everything can change, how far reality TV can go, and how real the consequences can be when entertainment crosses the line. By the one-year anniversary of the attack, the story was still being talked about. Documentaries were in production. College courses were teaching it as a case study. And both women, in very different ways, had been changed forever. #legacy, #unforgettable scandal in the end. Jasmine's downfall and Yandy's rise told two sides of the same story. One about the price of unchecked anger, and one about the strength it takes to rise above it. The world had watched them fall apart, and now it was watching them rebuild. And whether you loved them or hated them, one thing was clear. This wasn't just reality TV anymore. It was real life, and nothing would ever be the same again. 2 years later, the night that changed everything was still etched into the memory of Love and Popped Atlanta fans, not as just another dramatic episode, but as the most infamous scandal in the show's history. What began as a heated argument between two women spiraled into an assault. A courtroom showdown and a reckoning that shook the entire reality TV industry to its core. And while both Jasmine and Yandy had moved on in their own ways, the impact of that night continued to shape their lives, their legacies, and the culture around them. For Jasmine, rebuilding was an uphill battle that tested every ounce of her resilience. The world hadn't forgotten what she did, and it refused to let her forget either. Interviewers still asked about the attack first, no matter what new projects she promoted. Comment sections on her posts were still flooded with hateful reminders of her lowest moment. But instead of hiding from it, Jasmine decided to face it head on. She released a raw, unfiltered memoir titled Triggered: The Day I Lost Everything, where she took full accountability for her actions, opened up about the trauma that led to her anger, and revealed the behind-the-scenes pressure that pushed her over the edge. Critics were surprised and impressed. The book became a bestseller, praised for its honesty and vulnerability. And slowly, the public began to see Jasmine not just as the woman who attacked Yandi, but as someone who had learned, grown, and was trying to make amends. #second chance #triggered memoir still. Redemption was complicated. Opportunities returned, but not at the scale they once had. Brands were cautious. Networks were hesitant. Even her podcast, which had built a loyal audience, faced backlash whenever she spoke too candidly about the incident. "It's like I'm always one mistake away from losing everything again," Jasmine admitted in one emotional episode. But maybe that's the price of redemption. You never really stop paying. Yandy's path, meanwhile, had been a story of transformation and triumph. What could have broken her instead propelled her to new heights. She launched a successful media company focused on producing uplifting content for women. She became a keynote speaker at global empowerment summits. and her nonprofit Safe Space initiative grew into a nationwide movement, helping thousands of women escape abusive environments and rebuild their lives. Empowerment, #safe space. But even with all her success, Yandi often reflected on the night that started it all. "I wish it never happened," she said during a documentary interview. "I wish Jasmine and I could have walked away before it got that far. But I also know that moment made me who I am today. It taught me strength. It taught me boundaries. And it showed me how powerful it is to turn pain into purpose." The Love and Hip Hop franchise had also changed forever. Gone were the days when producers encouraged explosive confrontations. Today, cast members were given access to therapists, conflict resolution coaches, and support resources. Contracts included strict anti-violence clauses, and any hint of aggression was handled immediately. The Jasmine Yandi incident had forced the industry to grow up, and while some fans missed the old drama, most agreed that change was necessary. New rules, #reality TV revolution, the fanbase, too, had evolved. Many who once treated fights as entertainment now saw them differently as potential turning points in real people's lives. Discussions around accountability, mental health, and media ethics became part of the cultural conversation. And new cast members looked to Jasmine and Yandi's story as a warning that fame is fragile, that one impulsive decision can erase years of work, and that the internet never truly forgets. In a surprising twist, the two women eventually shared a stage again, not on Love and Hip Hop, but at a women's empowerment panel hosted by a major network. Their appearance was brief, their interaction polite but distant. Still, it was a powerful moment. Two women who had once been enemies, now standing in the same room, speaking on growth, healing, and accountability. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was closure. #healing, #full circle, and maybe. That's what their story was always meant to be. Not a story about hatred or rivalry, but one about how even the most public disasters can lead to private growth. Jasmine would never fully escape the shadow of that night, but she had turned her lowest moment into a lesson for others. Yandi would always carry the scars of the attack, but she had transformed them into strength that changed lives beyond her own. Their paths would likely never cross again, but their legacies would always be intertwined, a cautionary tale etched into the history of reality television. Their story wasn't about who won or who lost. It was about how both of them survived. #legacy, #LHHATL forever. And as the cameras rolled on a new generation of love and hip-hop stars, the lesson they left behind remained crystal clear. Fame is fleeting, but consequences are forever. And no matter how far you run from your past, it will always follow you until you decide to face it, learn from it, and grow beyond it. Because in the end, Jasmine and Yandi's story wasn't just about violence, revenge, or scandal. It was about humanity. Messy, painful, complicated humanity. And that's why, years later, people are still talking about it. Because beneath all the drama, the ratings, and the chaos, this wasn't just reality TV, it was real life. And it changed everything. The final chapter of the Jasmine and Yandi saga is not just a conclusion, it's a lesson, a warning. A mirror held up to fame, power, ego, and the human cost of entertainment. Years have passed since that night, but the scars, both visible and invisible, remain etched into the fabric of love and hip-hop. Atlanta, and into the hearts of those who lived through it. For Jasmine, life after the storm became a balancing act between accountability and redemption. Every interview she gave, every appearance she made, every project she launched, all of it was measured against the weight of her past. And yet, she refused to let that night define her forever. Slowly, she transformed her platform into something bigger than herself. She launched a foundation dedicated to anger management and emotional wellness, targeting young women navigating fame and social pressure. The program became a lifeline for many, a chance to learn from her mistakes rather than repeat them. #growth, #lessons learned. She also started speaking publicly about the exploitation within reality television. revealing how cast members were manipulated into conflicts for ratings and how little mental health support was provided. Her honesty sparked an industry-wide conversation and led to major networks reevaluating how they treat their talent. "I'm not excusing what I did," she said in a viral interview, "but I'm exposing what created the environment where it happened. If my story stops even one fight from going too far, then maybe I've done something right." Yandy's journey continued to flourish. She expanded her media company into a multi-million-dollar brand, produced documentaries about women's empowerment, and even launched a political action group focused on domestic violence prevention. Her story, once defined by victimhood, became one of leadership and impact. She was no longer just a reality star. She was a CHANGMAKER. Yandy empowers #Beyond Reality TV yet. Despite their very different paths, both women were forever linked by that one night. They had become symbols of two sides of the same coin, one representing the consequences of unchecked anger, the other the power of resilience and forgiveness. And perhaps the most surprising part of all, their shared scandal ultimately pushed the industry to grow. Reality television was no longer a lawless playground for chaos. It had evolved. New codes of conduct were written. Mandatory therapy sessions became standard. Even editing practices changed, shifting the focus away from glorifying violence toward highlighting resolution and growth. What started as one of the darkest moments in reality TV history had transformed the genre itself. Changemakers, #industry shift fans, too, were different. They had matured. Many who once cheered for fights and breakdowns now demanded accountability and authenticity. They supported stories of healing and second chances. They understood that these weren't just characters. They were real people with real emotions, real consequences, and real lives. And so, as the final chapter of Jasmine and Yandy's story closes, what remains isn't just the memory of a fight. It's the legacy of everything that came after: the legal battles, the tears, the rebuilding, the reform, the second chances. It's a story that will be studied, debated, and remembered for decades to come, not because of the chaos it caused, but because of the change it inspired. #legacy lives on. #LHHATL, history in the end. Their story teaches us something far deeper than what reality TV could ever script. It reminds us that one decision, one second of anger, one moment of violence can alter the course of a life forever. But it also shows us that redemption is possible. Healing is real. And even the deepest wounds can become the foundation for something better. For Jasmine, the lesson was about restraint, accountability, and rebuilding trust. For Yandi, it was about strength, boundaries, and turning pain into power. And for the rest of us, 'twas a wake-up call. Entertainment should never come at the cost of someone's humanity. Final lesson. From chaos to change. And so, the curtain closes on one of the most infamous chapters in love and hip-hop Atlanta history. A chapter filled with violence, heartbreak, redemption, and transformation. It's a story that reminds us that reality TV is more than what happens on camera. It's a reflection of the people behind it, their flaws, their struggles, their mistakes, and their capacity to grow. And that, more than anything, is why this story will never truly end. Because as long as people chase fame, fight for attention, and battle their demons under the bright lights of reality television, the lessons of Jasmine and Yandi will remain whispered in casting calls, studied in contracts, and remembered by those who dare to step into the spotlight. And there you have it. The fight that started as just another messy reality TV moment, but spiraled into a cultural earthquake that nobody saw coming. What happened between Jasmine and Yandi wasn't just a fight. It was a wake-up call, a brutal, bloody reminder of how thin the line is between entertainment and destruction. It was proof that one impulsive decision, one angry second, can destroy reputations, end careers, and change lives forever. But it was also something deeper, a story of growth, accountability, redemption, and strength. Jasmine's journey shows that even in the ashes of your worst mistakes, you can rebuild. You can learn. You can make something meaningful out of the mess you created. And Yandy's path proves that even after unimaginable trauma, you can rise stronger, louder, and more powerful than before. Now, here's the question only you can answer. Do you think Jasmine deserved the second chance she's fighting for? Oh, yeah. Or should her actions define her forever? Should Yandi forgive and move on? Or is some damage just too deep to ever repair? Tell us what you think, because this story isn't over without your voice. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to smash that like button. Subscribe and turn on all notifications so you never miss the next scandal, betrayal, or redemption arc we break down right here. This was one of the most shocking chapters in Love and Hip Hop history. But trust me, the next one will be even wilder. Stay locked in, stay tuned, and remember, this is Celeb Strike, where secrets don't stay buried. Scandals never sleep, and the truth always comes out. Truth always comes out.